Leaving the United States is more than just throwing a dart at a map and hoping for the best. There's a lot to think about, from how do you even start with planning a move like this to where you should go, how to find housing, and which health insurance plan to buy. I'm Kristin. I first lived abroad more than 20 years as a study abroad student, and I've been helping people move overseas ever since. So in this video, I'm going to give you your first 10 steps to creating your escape plan from the United States. As we go along, feel free to drop any questions that you have in the comments below. And if you get to the end of this video and feel like you still need help, then you can reach out to me directly at travelingwithkristin.com/relocation. And I'll also leave all the resources that I share with you here in the description below. So the first thing to do is to think about why you're even doing this. Take a moment and just think about what your reasons are. Is this something that you are trying to escape from, or is this something that you are aspiring towards? Or maybe it's a little bit of both. For a lot of my relocation clients, the reasons can be things like wanting to lower their cost of living in a different country, wanting to have a better quality of life, or getting a better overall standard of living for a lower cost, or some combination of that. I've also noticed a lot more people in recent years who are moving abroad for political reasons, or maybe they don't really feel like a part of the US culture anymore the way that they did years ago or even decades ago. I know that this reason that you want to move, whatever it is today, it's probably going to change in the future. I know for me, when I first started living abroad when I was 20 years old, the only thing that I wanted to do was travel the world as much as possible. And I was also an avid surfer at the time. So I lived in places like Costa Rica and Australia because my life revolved around surfing. Now it's been quite a few years since I paddled out, and my priorities are different now. So just focus on what's important to you right now and know that that might change in the future, and that's totally okay, because you can always change your mind, you can change countries later, but just think about what's important to you now and in the near future. You also want to consider what leaving the United States means to you. Does this mean you just need to get away for a sabbatical? Does it mean you want to spend half of the year living in other countries? Or does it mean that you're just done and you want to leave permanently, or at least for the foreseeable future? So think about what comes up for you there, and then also think about the people that you're leaving. This could be your community, your family, your friends, potentially a significant other. Is there anyone that you're bringing with you? Children, a partner, your parents? Or is there someone that you need to talk to about this decision to see how it will affect them, or to see if they want to stay behind? In some cases, this can mean making hard decisions, but before you start looking at locations to move to and things like that, it's really important to spend some time just defining what leaving America looks like, whether that's a slow travel situation, or you want to get permanent residency somewhere, or you see yourself kind of going back and forth. You don't want to leave forever. You don't want to renounce your citizenship. You just need to get a little bit of space. Can't blame you for that. In my case, I've spent the larger part of 20 years in 60 plus different countries, but in some of those countries I was only there for a day, some countries a week, some countries a month, and some are countries that I stayed in for many years, or I kept coming back to year after year for 5, 10, or even more years. So this is another thing, kind of like with the first step. Your priorities will change, and also your desire to travel might change. You might want to start off this journey with slow traveling and then ultimately move to a place where you get permanent residency, or you might want to do things the opposite. You might want to just have a plan B and get a second passport and maybe move around the world, but not necessarily live in any one place. And that's okay too. The beautiful thing about this is that there are no wrong answers. It's all about you designing the life that you like and the life that you want, and knowing that at this time in history, it's possible. The next step is money, and it doesn't necessarily matter how much money you have. What matters is where it comes from. So if you're retired and you have a pension, that's great. You don't have to go to work anymore. But for the rest of us, having a job can be something that can hold you back from moving to another country. So if you have a physical in-person job where you have to go to a location every day, then that's something to think about. Is this a job that you can do remotely? Would you need to change jobs? Would you need to completely change careers and learn a new skill so that you could do kind of the digital nomad thing? Or would you like to get a job in another country? If you are looking for a work permit somewhere and you want to work for a physical company in person in another place, then that can actually help you determine which country you would want to go to, because there's different work permits and you would need to get sponsored by a company in that country to be able to go and work there. Fortunately, a lot of countries now offer digital nomad visas and also freelancer visas or remote work visas. So if you just want to work for yourself, work online, there are a lot of places that you can go now where you can actually officially, technically work online from your laptop. So that's a good workaround where you wouldn't have to get a work permit, but you can live in that country and you can work with clients from anywhere. If you already work from home or you already work remotely or you're retired, then this step actually is pretty fast because you're just thinking about where your money's coming from and how you can access it abroad, which we'll get to later. But if you do have a job that you can't do from anywhere, then this step can take a little bit longer. So if you want more resources on that, then in the description below, I'll link to some videos that I made about how to become a digital nomad, how to find remote jobs. And I also wrote the book Digital Nomads For Dummies, where we have 2 whole sections dedicated to finding remote jobs, starting your own job, or starting an online business. Sticking with money, the next thing you want to do is just pencil out your budget. Now, I know it's really tempting to just start looking at Google Maps and trying to figure out a really cool place to live. But before we get there, let's just focus on how much money you have. So the main things you want to look at are, of course, like what are your income streams coming in? What are those remote, location independent income streams, such as a pension or interest income or a remote salary income? This can get pretty complex. So if you want a guide to go from, then I'll link to my free moving abroad budget in the description below. But the main thing to think about, and what I have done in this spreadsheet for you, is breaking down your budget into 3 categories. So the first category of expenses that you want to look at, and also income, are what you have at home now. Like basically, what is your household budget right now? And also, what are any pre-departure one-time expenses that you might have, as well as one-time windfalls. So anything that you're selling and then anything that you're buying just for this journey to leave the United States. So things that you could sell include your car, your house, your stuff on Facebook Marketplace or eBay or something like that. And then big expenses could be rent deposit, a plane ticket, a security deposit in your new country, buying new luggage, buying new equipment, anything that you're just buying once before you leave and before you go there. You also want to think about recurring expenses. So things like subscription expenses, storage unit fees, anything like that. And yeah, no strings attached. You can just download my budget in the description and that'll help you out. The second part of that budget is like your actual moving expenses. So this would be things like shipping fees, extra luggage costs, anything that you're incurring in the actual process of moving to the other country. And then there's a third sheet in the budget, that's your cost of living expenses. So that's basically like your current household budget now, but in your destination. So that is what your average cost of living will be in the months and years after you move. So it might be a little bit higher in the first month because you have all those one-time expenses, but then once you get there after the first month or so, things will average out and chances are you'll be saving quite a bit of money compared to what your cost of living is in the US. Now, there's a lot of resources to figure out your cost of living online. They're all gonna be a little bit different, and they're all gonna be a little bit different from what you actually experience, but it's a pretty good guide. You can go to a website like Numbeo or Expatistan. There's also a website called Nomad List, which is now at nomads.com, where you can check out the cost of living for locals, for digital nomads, and also for expats or foreigners who are living there long term. And this will just give you a good idea, and then you can always tweak it later. I like to always add a percent, at least 10 or 15% margin of error, just in case there's unanticipated expenses and just in case things cost more than you think. But either way, you'll be likely saving a lot of money. Now comes the really fun part, which is choosing a destination. This is where a lot of people could spend, a few years or so watching YouTube videos about all the cool places that you could live. But let's block out all the noise for a second, including my own videos, and just think of what comes to mind first. When you envision yourself living in another country, what do you see? What do you hear? What do you feel? Where do you see yourself? Just take a second, close your eyes, and think of, if money wasn't an option, if your job wasn't an option, if what your friends and family say didn't matter, where would you live? Where in the world do you really see yourself living? I find that, sure, there's upwards of 200 countries in the world, but when you close your eyes or write in your journal and think about where would you actually want to live, there's probably just a handful of places that come to mind first. So just take a couple of minutes and brainstorm, what would be your number one place that you've always wanted to go and that you really think that the lifestyle there would fit your values, fit the things that you like to do and the activities that you can do. Maybe you've always envisioned yourself living an Emily in Paris kind of lifestyle, working in a cool building and drinking coffee and eating bread and gossiping with your coworkers and walking to work on cobblestone streets and stopping for a macaron or something. Or maybe you've always seen yourself living on a beach and somewhere in Southeast Asia, like Thailand or the Philippines or Bali or Vietnam. And you definitely don't want to live in cold, rainy Europe for half the year. You just want to be in the endless summer or maybe even the endless spring. And you want to look at places like the Central Valley of Costa Rica or Medellin, Colombia. I mean, there's so many options out there. Whatever you envision for yourself, then that's often a good place to start. So take a couple minutes, write some ideas down, and then you can always go back and rank them and investigate more in later steps. Now, leaving the United States means a new chapter in your life and likely providing a bit more time, space, and money to be able to pursue some long-held hobbies and goals that you might have been putting off. A great way to do that is with Skillshare. This video is sponsored by Skillshare, an online learning platform that you can use anytime, anywhere, at any age. Skillshare is the largest online learning community for creatives. With Skillshare, you can choose from thousands of classes, from beginner to advanced, and almost any topic you can think of. I first started using Skillshare almost 10 years ago when I was first thinking about starting a YouTube channel. I used it to learn travel photography and also how to film and edit videos. But you can use it for anything, whether it's something fun like a hobby, learning how to play the guitar, or something more business-minded. You can find classes about drawing, painting, launching a freelancing business or a side hustle, or improving your skills at writing, graphic design, and more. You can search by skill or software, such as Microsoft Excel or Adobe Illustrator. I'm currently taking a music production course on Skillshare, but I'm excited to know what you choose. Join Skillshare now using my link below this video or scan this QR code right here and get your first month absolutely free. But act fast because it's only for the first 500 people to use my link. So click below or scan here and start learning and creating something new today. So after you've thought about which countries you'd like to go to, now it's time to do a little digging and consider which visa and residency options would be right for you. Now, as a US citizen, we have one of the stronger passports in the world. So this means that you can probably go to the country that you have in mind for at least 30 days to test it out as a tourist. You can book a little exploratory trip there, even if it's just for a week or so. But usually we can stay anywhere from 30 to 90, in some cases even 180 days, or even a whole year, depending on the country you go to. So if you're thinking of a country in Europe, then with your passport, you could probably stay for up to 90 days. If you're going somewhere in Eastern Europe, somewhere like Albania or Georgia, you could potentially stay there for up to a year without having to apply for any sort of specific visa or residency permit. Now, these timelines can be a little bit less in certain places like Southeast Asia and the Caribbean, but in Latin America, in Australia, it's usually 3 months, maybe up to 6 months in places like Australia. And this can give you a really good guide to see if that is where you want to live. But if you're thinking, no, Kristin, I'm going somewhere permanently, I don't ever want to come back to the United States, well, then you will need a more permanent residency option. Basically, every country is going to offer a lot of different ways for people to emigrate there. The most common ways for people that are voluntarily moving somewhere for fun or for quality of life reasons or for work reasons, as an expat from the US, it's typically going to be a work permit, a study permit, or some type of temporary residency option at first. And there's also now many countries that are offering digital nomad visas. So this can give you a way to stay in places typically for a year or more if you have some form of online income and if you work remotely. There's also retirement visas that can be available in different countries. So focus on the countries that you like the most, see what they offer, and see if you would qualify for that. And typically, you're gonna wanna make sure that you meet their income requirements as well. So in some cases, it could be a one-time investment, an investment in real estate, or it could be proof of a certain level of income that you have coming in every month. But it could be a lot less than you're thinking. Some countries can require as low as like $600 or $750 per month in income to be able to live there, especially places where the cost of living is really low. Now, something really important to think about here is if you need to apply for this type of status before you leave the United States or after. So there are certain countries like Mexico where you'll need to get this process rolling before you leave the US, but there's other countries like Costa Rica where you can apply for one of their residency categories from within the country. So if you need any more help with something like that, you'll want to contact a residency attorney, or you can always reach out to me on my website as well. Step 7 is a bit of a bonus. This is a little intermission. You can just sit back and relax for a minute because we just did a lot. We just covered a lot of information. But when you get this far in the process, if you're doing it on your own time, then here's where you'll pretty much have narrowed it down to your top 1, 2, or 3 places that you want to go, that you can afford to go, and actually that you can go to and you can live there because you found out that there is a visa or residency option that works for you. So give yourself a little pat on the back. This is a great time to actually start the process of moving to another country, or a good time to book an exploratory trip. So I recommend going for at least a week or so to these destinations to see if you really like it as much in person as you do on paper. But you know, it's not necessary. You can also just move there directly, but a lot of people like to do this exploratory trip first. And even if you only have a few days per destination, that's better than nothing. So let me know so far in the comments, what are the places that came up for you as you were thinking about it while watching this video, and what are like your top 3 destinations? Comment below. Once you know where you're going, or at least where you're going for your exploratory trip, it's time to set a departure date. Now, this doesn't have to be set in stone, but I like to do like a worst case scenario and a best case scenario. So you kind of have a range there where, okay, if you want to move by January of next year, or, you think you might be able to move by next summer, but, worst case scenario, maybe summer of the following year. And this can give you a target to work back from, and it can take the idea of like, oh my gosh, I'm leaving the US, I don't like it anymore, but when am I leaving? Am I leaving right now, or am I leaving 3 years from now, or 10 years from now, or what's the deal? So as you're watching this video, we thought about a lot of things that could lead you to, at this point, thinking like, okay, I think realistically, maybe you need to change jobs, maybe you need to save some money, things like that. Like, what are the things that you need to do before it's actually time to move? And then setting that target date can make it real. It's just like setting any kind of goal. When you write it down, it makes it real. When you circle that date on the calendar, it makes it real. So what is your target date? Let me know. Once you have your departure date set, you can work backwards, and that's really the amount of time that you have to handle all of the logistics around your move. So this is really like the nuts and bolts of the move. Things like which health insurance plan to buy or cancel, what to do with your cell phone, buying your plane ticket, getting all of your equipment, everything that you want to get from your packing list. And I actually have a free packing list that I'll also link to in this video description that is especially for people that want to move abroad or travel long-term as digital nomads. So that'll help you out as well. This logistical period can get pretty complex depending on what you have going on. If you own a lot of physical assets, if you own a house, car, if you plan to leave permanently versus if you're just going to be going temporarily or kind of going back and forth between the US, if you own your own business, if you have multiple bank accounts. So there's a lot of things to think about here, but you want to make sure that you're giving yourself enough time from your anticipated departure date to, cover all of this stuff, what to do with your mail and, selling all your stuff, storing your stuff, things like that. And the final step is actually moving. And I can tell you from experience, there is no better feeling than making your way to the airport with your backpack and your potentially overweight suitcase and starting the first day of the rest of your life. You just feel so much freedom, so much excitement, so much anticipation about what is to come. Now, of course, when you get to your destination, that starts off a whole lot of other things that you need to think about, which is topics for other videos. Everything from, how to get your internet installed to how to cope with culture shock, where to go grocery shopping, where to find a good doctor or a dentist, how to meet people, and all sorts of things. But fortunately, I have 500 videos on this channel covering all of those topics and more. So feel free to subscribe if you're new here and you're interested in slow travel or living abroad. And if you want to go more in detail into the financial side of moving abroad, then watch this video next. See you there.